All right. Today we're going to talk about simple interest. Okay. Several things we've got to define. First of all is the word interest. Okay. Interest is the amount paid or earned for the use of money. Okay? Basically, there's two types of interest. If I have a loan from a bank, credit card, anything like that, in other words, I borrow money, okay, I have to pay interest to borrow money. Okay, the second type is when I invest money. In other words, I give the bank my money in a savings account, or I give the bank my money in a certificate of deposit, okay, or I give my money to a company by buying stock for them to use, okay. In those where we invest, like we said, in a savings account, a CD or certificate of deposit, okay, a bond, another one that used to be popular, not as much now, but a U.S. Treasury note, okay. All those things are investments, and in that you earn money for the use of your money. Okay? So, most commonly, unfortunately for us in America, is the first one, loans. Okay? We have credit card loans, we have house loans, we have car loans, we have boat loans, we have motorcycle loans, we have a lot of debt usually as Americans. Okay, we have TV loans, we have living room loans, we have furniture loans, we have flooring loans, everything these days. I mean, you can't go anywhere where they're not offering you all these great deals on, we're going to, like rooms to go. Well, you can buy a whole room full of furniture and not pay interest on it till 2020. Okay? So you have all of these different types of loans. They're even coming up with loans these days that are just, they're outrageous. Instead of charging you interest, like let's say you go buy a car, and the car is worth $15,000. Okay, well usually they would charge you interest on $15,000 and you'd pay it back. Well, instead of doing that, because people are like, well, I'm not paying 23% interest on that car because that's high, then they just, okay, then we're not going to charge you any interest, we're just going to charge you $27,000 for the $15,000 vehicle. Okay, and people unfortunately have to pay that because a bank's not going to give them money because, either they haven't been in their job long enough or they maybe have some bad credit or things like that. And so, unfortunately, you have people out there that are going to take advantage of that. And so for us in America, most of the time, we'll have a lot more in loans than we have in investments. Okay? Usually the biggest loan that there's out there that most people have is a mortgage to buy a house. And they have to pay interest on that loan. Okay? So that's what interest is. Interest is the amount of money I'm earning for you to use my money, or it's the amount of money I'm paying so I can use your money. Okay? And there's different ways to figure it. Today we're only talking about simple interest. There's interest called compound interest. You don't want that unless you're investing. If you're investing, you want compound interest. If you're paying back a loan, you want simple interest. Because compound interest figures on a monthly basis on your balance every time. Okay, and it basically you end up paying a lot more if you have compounded interest than if you have simple interest. And so simple interest is good when you're paying back money. Compound interest would be better if you're getting paid for your money. Okay? But today we're only going to talk about simple interest. There's balloon note interest. There's a bunch of different ways that you can pay this back. Right now we're just talking about the simple interest. Next word is principal. Okay, and it's not the principal of a school. It is principal, not principal. Okay. All right, principal. This is the amount. PLE. Right. No, this is correct. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Principal would be PLE. So, principal. I don't know. I know that's how you spell principal for money. I know that's how you spell it. Trust me, I've had 4 years of college having to spell it every day. Okay, now, maybe how you spell principal too. Now, principal, pal, pull, whatever, is the amount that you borrow or invest. Okay, this is the actual amount that you're getting because you're borrowing it, or you're giving it because you're investing it. Okay? Simple interest, and there is an actual definition for it. Simple interest is paid only on the principal. Okay? When we talked about compound interest a while ago, compound interest, for example, would be, let's say I invest $1,000, okay, and I keep it in a bank for 3 years. Okay, well, the bank's going to pay me. They won't. This is a long time ago. They used to pay this. I'm just using it because it's simple. The bank's going to pay me 10% interest each year. Okay, well, in simple interest, they're just going to pay you 10% on the 1,000 each year. So 10% of 1,000 would be 100. Okay, so in year one, you're going to gain $100 on that $1,000. Okay, year two, you're still only going to gain $100 on the $1,000. Year three, you're still only going to gain $100 on the $1,000. That's simple interest. In compound interest, you're going to have the $1,000. Then at the end of year one, you're going to have $1,000 plus the 100, so that'd be $1,100. So compound interest would now take that $1,100 and give you 10% on it. And so that second year you would gain $110. So now you would have $2,210, okay? And then they're going to pay you, $1,210. Then they're going to pay you 10% on $1,210, and so you can see that you're going to get more money that way than if they just pay me $100 each year on the original $1,000. And so that's the difference between compound interest and simple interest. Now, unfortunately, it works the same way with the loan. Okay, they're going to charge you for the unpaid balance each year, and instead of taking the balance of $1,000, dividing it out, charging the interest that one time and dividing it out. So that's the difference between the two for simple interest and compound interest. Like I said, we're just working with simple interest this year. Now, annual interest rate. Okay? This is the percent of interest that will be charged or paid annually in a year. Now, the last one is the word balance. This is the principal plus the interest. Okay? All right, now, to figure interest, there is a formula. Okay, the formula for simple interest and this is the most common one. Okay, there are others, but it's called the time value of money, and they add some exponents to it, things of that nature. But for us, all we're going to worry about is I is equal to PRT. Okay, I is equal to PRT. Now, I is obviously interest. P is the principal. R is the rate. T is the time in years. Okay? So to figure out the interest, we simply take the principal times the rate times the time. And that will get us how much interest that you're going to pay. Okay? Let me give you an example of this. Let's say I borrow $5,000 for, I'm borrowing here, this is a borrow. I'm borrowing $5,000 for 10 years. Now let's go with something more realistic. Let's go 5 years. At these days, you could probably get 6% interest at 6%. Okay? So, I'm going to borrow $5,000. Maybe I'm purchasing a car and I've got some cash. I'm putting cash down on it, and so I'm borrowing the rest from a bank, or that would obviously be a bank. That wouldn't be like where you pay at the car dealership or something. $5,000 for 5 years at 6%. Okay? So, to figure out what my interest is going to be, I simply take interest is equal to 5,000 times the rate. The rate is 6%, so that is 0.06 times the time, which is 5 years. Okay, and where I got 0.06, I took 6%, took the decimal right here and moved it 2 places to the left, because we can't multiply a percent without changing it to a decimal or a fraction. Okay, now when we multiply this out, you can do any of the order. I mean, I could take 5 times the 0.06 or 5 times 5,000, then times 0.06. Doesn't matter. You're still going to get the same answer. Okay, so whichever way you would see it better, do it that way. I'm just going to take 0.06 times 5,000. Okay, that would be 0, 0, 0, 30, and I have 2 decimal places, so 1, 2. So 300 times 5, which is $1,500. So I'm going to pay $1,500 back to the person I borrowed the money to, plus the $5,000. Okay? So you're basically paying somebody $1,500 for the use of their money. Now, here's what you do. That's just the interest. Okay? To figure how much I have to pay back each month, we do this. Okay? For the payment each month, you would simply do this. Take the $5,000, the principal, plus the interest, $1,500. Put those two together. You get $6,500, and we divide that by 60. How long did I borrow it for? 5 years. How many months are in 5 years? 60. Okay. So if I'm paying it back in 4 years, then it's 48 months, because they're going to make you make monthly payments most of the time. Okay? And so if you divide 60 into 6,500, that goes once, it'd be 60, remainder 5, bring down my 0. 60 doesn't go into 50, so that's 0. Add another 0. That would be 8, be 480, remainder 20. Bring down a 0. 60 into 200 goes 3 times. Be 180. So basically, $108.33. Okay? And what they would do there, since it's a repeating decimal, okay, and you would have that, you can have those. You would pay $108.33 for 59 payments. And then on the last payment, it might be $108.48, okay, to catch up whatever, the rounded off decimal was, okay. So you do occasionally have that, where it's not the same payment every time except for the last one, okay. So that's what you'd pay a month for $5,000 for 5 years. Now, that's $5,000. Most people are not going to let you borrow it for 5 years, okay. They're going to make you pay it back quicker than that. Okay, but that's just a simplistic problem, borrowing $5,000 for 5 years at 6% interest. Okay, now the same would be true. The same would be true if you were investing that. If you were investing $5,000, let's say you bought a 5-year certificate of deposit. Okay, most people are not going to give a 5-year certificate deposit. They're usually 1 year or 2 years, occasionally 3 years. But if you were going to get a 5-year certificate of deposit, that means I got a deposit. And here's how they do it. Okay, here's how they get the money to do it. You want to borrow $5,000. Let's say Grant wants to borrow $5,000. So he goes to Bank A. Okay, Bank A or B, and he says, hey, I want to borrow $5,000. And here's what the bank does. Here's how the bank makes money. Okay? They say, okay, Grant, we're going to borrow you the $5,000. We're going to let you borrow it for 6% interest. Okay? Well, Nick has bought a certificate of deposit with that bank that he's going to do for 3 years. A certificate of deposit says, I'm going to have $5,000 in your bank for the next 3 years. For that, the bank's going to pay him 3% interest. Okay? So they're paying him 3% interest, and they're charging Grant 6% interest. Okay? So the bank is making 3% on Nick's money when they let Grant borrow it. Okay? So they're really not even using, a lot of times, there's a certain amount of money they have to keep on hand, but that's why the bank will pay you money for you to keep your money in their bank, because then they're going to turn around and use that money for loans. They're going to let people borrow it. Sometimes it's 6%. Like right now, a certificate of deposit, probably, I haven't even looked, but I would assume since interest rates are so low, you probably would make maybe 1% on a certificate of deposit right now, maybe 2%, okay? Because the bank's going to turn around and loan that money, but like on a home mortgage, they're charging 4 to 5%, and so they've got to make their money, and that's how they make their money. They take people's money in, give them a little bit of money for that use of it, and then they take it back out to other people and make more money on it. Okay? That's how banks make money. Banks are not there just to help us. They have to make money. Now, if you're at a credit union's a little bit different. Okay? A credit union is supposedly a non-profit where they're not making profit on you. Okay? Now, I'm not sure that's really the case. I mean, people make, the people in that credit union make money as a salary, so they're obviously having to make some money. But what they're saying is that all the money that's invested, the time we pay that money out, that we pay those people, and the people pay us for the money they've borrowed, it all equals out and balances out, is what they're saying. Okay? So typically at a credit union, since they're not making money on your money, borrowing money or whatever, usually your interest rates will be a little better at a credit union than they are at a bank. Like, for example, teachers have a credit union. It's Educational Employees Credit Union. Okay? Now, I'm not a member of it. Okay? Just simply, I don't really have a lot of loans, and I really don't need to borrow money, things like that, and so I'm not a member of it, but they do have some decent rates for cars, things of that nature. Okay? Now, let's talk about another example. All right, let's get one out of the book. Yeah, I want to talk about one that doesn't use straight years. Let's look at number 8. Number 8 says $252 at 8% for 2 months. Now, what we used a while ago when we were figuring the interest was 5 years. And so we just multiplied times 5. Okay? I believe, let's see here. Yeah, they don't say what this account is. They don't say if it's, I'm assuming it's a savings account. Okay? So you have $252 at 8%. Now, so we set up our formula. I is equal to PRT. Now, understand we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items in this formula. Okay? Understand that they can give you any of the 3, and you have to solve for the other one. In other words, they may give you interest and rate and time, and they want you to tell them what the principal is. Okay? Well, then it just becomes a normal equation, a one-step equation that we've had in the past. We'll talk about it here in a second. This one here, we plug in the information. 252 goes there, 8% goes there, 2 months goes there. So that's I equals 252 times 0.08 for 8% times, now here's where it's different. I can't put a 2 in the parentheses. If I put a 2 in the parentheses, that means 2 years. Okay? It's 2 months. So what I have to do is I have to put 2 over 12 because that is the fraction of year that I'm using.
Could we turn the fraction into a decimal and use that instead?
No, not on this one you can't because you'll have a repeating decimal. Okay? You're going to have to use, and here's why. You're going to have to use a fraction most of the time. Okay? Because most of the time, your denominator, like right now we could reduce that to 1 over 6. That would be okay. But if I divide 6 into 1, I'm going to get a repeating decimal number. If I divide 6 into 5, I'm going to get a repeating decimal number. So most of the time you're going to get a repeating decimal number. There are occasionally Like, for example, if I was using 3 months, 3 months would be 1/4. And so, yeah, I could turn that into a decimal and use it because 1/4 will come out and be a regular, terminating decimal. But for the most part, you just need to take it and change it. We need to take this 252 times 0.08 and make it 1/6. That'll help a little bit. We won't have to reduce anything at the end. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do here, because it'll make it a little easier, I'm going to take the 1/6 and multiply it times 252. And so I'm going to take interest is equal to 252 times 1/6 times 0.08. Okay? 1/6 times 252, reverse those two numbers there. 252 over 1 times 1/6. Well, I know I can cross cancel. Okay? 6 is going to go into 6 one time. 6 goes into that 42 times. Okay? And so now I have interest is equal to 42 times 0.08. If you didn't change it to 1/6, you would still have the same 42. Because here's why. I would be dividing 12 into 252. Okay, 12 goes into 252 21 times. Then I'd have a 2 right there that I'd still have to multiply it by. So it'd be 21 times 2. So it'd end up being the same thing. All right, 42 times 0.08. Okay, what is that? What? 3.36? Okay, $3.36. Okay, now that's the interest. So the interest is $3.36. Now, they want the balance in the account as well. So the balance would equal $3.36 plus the original amount of $252. Okay, which means I have what? What's the balance? Yeah, 255.36. So both of those would be your answer. Okay, so anytime that you're given, now here's the difference. Let's say they gave us that we're going to invest it for 1.5 years. Okay, then it would just be 1.5 instead of like 2/12 or 1/6. It'd just be 1.5. Okay, if they said you were going to do it for 15 months, okay, well then put 15 over 12, and that would be the time figure that you're going to multiply it by. Zach?
What is the balance?
The balance is, in this case, because it's a savings account, that's how much money you would have at the end of the 2 months. Your money that you initially, in other words, they initially put $252 in their savings account, and they didn't touch it. They didn't put more money in or more money out, okay? $252, and they put in there for 2 months at 8%, and they got $3.36 back. Now, obviously, that doesn't seem like a lot of money, right? Okay. Well, what if it's $252,000? Okay. Well, you just take, if I increase this 252 by 10, that would be 2,520, right? Well, then I'm going to move that decimal one place to the left or to the right. So it'd be $33.60. If I go to $25,200, then that's going to change to $336. If I go to $225,000, that's going to change to $3,360 for 2 months. Okay, so obviously the more money you have, the better off you are with interest. Okay, if you're just depositing a small amount, then it's not that big of a deal. Like I've got a savings account that I run money in and out of, and I think like interest my last 3 months is like 2 cents.
Nice.
You know, I get 2 cents a month. Woo! All right. Yeah. You know, for a year I got 24 cents. All right. Yeah, awesome. I didn't even get a quarter. You know, Because that's why, the reason being is because, like, right now for a savings account at a bank, I think the interest rate that you get is like 0.40%. So like 0.004 is what you would multiply by. Because interest rates are so low, they don't charge you a lot of interest. Like on a car loan right now, you may have 1.75% interest through a bank. Well, that's cheap. It's not a whole lot of money. Okay, they're not making a whole lot of money on loans right now. Okay, and so that they're not going to make a lot of money. So if I'm charging Celine 2% interest on a loan she's got for a car, well, then I can't give you 2% because then I'm not making any money. I can't give you really 1% because that's not making me any money either. Okay, so I give you 0.5% on the money you're investing with me, and I charge her 2%. Okay, and so that way they're making 1.5%. That's still not a lot, but it's better than 1%. Okay, all right. Let's look at another one. Let's look at number 11. They give us $2,000 at 9.6% interest for 8 months. Okay, so they've thrown a decimal percent in there, and now they've thrown another fractional part of a year. Okay, well, we just plug it into the formula. I is equal to PRT. Okay, so that means I is equal to 2,000 times 0.096 times 8/12. Okay, well, we can reduce 8/12 to 2/3. Okay. Now, I prefer when you have a fraction of a month to go ahead and multiply it times the principal. The reason why is because if I take 0.096 times 1,000, I'm going to get a decimal number. Okay, and now I've got to get a decimal number and convert it to a fraction because I can't put 2/3 as a decimal because it's 0.6 with a bar over it. Okay, so I always take, when I have a fraction in the formula, I take it times my whole number first. So in other words, interest is equal to 2,000 times 2/3 times 0.096. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to have a fraction or I'm not going to have to do some other work, but at least this way, maybe it's a little easier. So that gives me that right there. So that's going to give me 4,000 over 3. Okay? And unfortunately, that's still going to be a repeating decimal number. Okay? So now I've got to do this. I've got to take this and make it a fraction. Okay? 0.096 as a fraction. That's the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that's 96 over 1,000. Okay? Now it's a little easier. Those zeros cross-cancel because it's 1,000 into 4,000. Okay? Now I have 4 times 96, but the good thing is I can erase that because 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 96 32 times. And so it's 4 times 32. 4 times 32 is 128, and that is my interest. So $128. We take the interest. We want to know the balance. So the balance is equal to principal plus interest. So that means balance is equal to $2,000 plus $128. So balance is equal to $2,128. Okay. Now, we're going to finish this up on Monday, but I do want you to try a couple of the problems. Okay? So the ones I want you to try, so this is, what is it, 9.8? 9.8, we want to do 2 through 5 and 8 through 13. Okay? Those are only the interest ones. Okay? They're not having to, I want to talk about on Monday, if one of them's missing, what do we do? How do we solve it? So that's what we'll stop with there. Okay?